Europe, as a group of countries, is the biggest commercial bloc in the world and represents more than 30% of the world's exports to Africa. 5 EU countries are among the top 10 investors in Africa in 2013 in terms of FDI flows. The EU is the largest provider of development aid in the world, contributing more than half of all official development assistance worldwide. Between 2007 and 2012, African countries received close to 24 billion euros in assistance from the EU, making the African continent the biggest recipient of EU aid. Europe is the first financial supporter of the African Union Commission's programs. Africa is an emerging continent with a huge demographic and natural resources potential. Today, Africa has new partnerships with big powers in the world: China, the US, India, Turkey, to name but a few. These partnerships offer new possibilities and opportunities for Africa and cast some doubt on the added value of traditional European development aid. Since the 1960s, Africa and Europe have intensified their exchanges in all sectors, such as trade, political dialogue, development cooperation, dialogue between people and societies. The two continents represent, with around 80 countries, almost half of the United Nations General Assembly membership. Africa-Europe relations take place at several levels: on a continent-to-continent level, sub-regional level, national level, and between people. The African diaspora in Europe is diverse and numerous and also contributes to African prosperity. However, Africa and Europe very much depend on each other, and as a former minister said, they are like an Adinkra crocodile, with 2 heads and 1 stomach. Africa-EU relations do not happen in a void. EU member states interact with African governments, and some of them have been interacting with Africans way before the EU did. Some European states, and in particular the UK, France, Portugal, Germany and Belgium, have maintained strong relations with their former colonies. The history of colonisation and its consequences is still a sensitive issue that may at times influence EU decisions on Africa. European states with no colonial legacy have also developed relations with African states. What are the key documents that underpin relations between the two continents? Historically, the EU dealt and still deals with Africa under 3 separate groupings: Sub-Saharan Africa within the African, Caribbean and Pacific Group, or ACP, under the Cotonou Agreement, Northern Africa, and South Africa. For this reason, in 2007, the EU, African states and the AU agreed the joint Africa-EU strategy to treat Africa as one. The other agreements are still in place, and I'll now go into more detail about them. The Cotonou Agreement is the foundation of Africa-Europe relations. It was signed in 2000 and is still valid until 2020. It is legally binding and creates obligations and rights for both sides, European and African, on common values and principles of governance. It builds on and replaces previous agreements between the EU and the ACP countries, the Lomé Conventions. EU assistance is provided through the European Development Fund, the EDF, to which EU member states contribute. To learn more about the Cotonou Agreement, please consult ECDPM's new dossier on EU-ACP relations towards 2020. Economic Partnership Agreements. Now I'll say a few words about economic and trade cooperation in the ACP-EU agreement. ACP countries used to have unilateral preferential access to the EU market. They could export goods to the EU market without having to pay tariffs. This trade regime was not compatible within WTO rules, so the EU had to reform it. From 2008 onwards, the EU and ACP countries have had to negotiate alternative and reciprocal trade agreements called Economic Partnership Agreements, or EPAs. Difficult negotiations between the EU and 5 regional groupings of African countries have been going on for more than a decade with limited success. This has created many frustrations. The Commission set October 2014 as the deadline for African countries to choose their trade regime with the EU. In July 2014, the Economic Community of West African States, or ECOWAS, and the Southern African Development Community, SADC, concluded regional EPAs with the EU. In mid-October 2014, the East African Community concluded its regional EPA. More information on EPAs is found on our website. The EU has had a strategic partnership with South Africa since 2007. Trade negotiations with South Africa are guided by the framework of a special trading agreement, the 1999 Trade Development Cooperation Agreement. South Africa is now negotiating on an economic partnership agreement. The financial instrument supporting the partnership with South Africa is not the European Development Fund, but the Development Cooperation Instrument. Relations with Algeria, Egypt, Libya, Morocco, and Tunisia are managed under two other frameworks. These countries are part of the European Neighbourhood Policy, which includes countries in Eastern Europe and the Middle East. They are also part of the so-called Barcelona process, started in the 1990s, which formed the basis of the Euromed partnership. This process has now led to the creation of the Union for the Mediterranean, which is a framework for multilateral cooperation between the EU and 15 Mediterranean countries. Under the Euromed partnership, the EU has concluded free trade agreements with all North African countries with the exception of Libya. Cooperation with North African countries is financed by the European Neighbourhood Instrument. In addition, the EU also designs its own sub-regional strategies, which include the Strategy for the Sahel, the Strategic Framework for the Horn of Africa, the Strategic Framework for the Gulf of Guinea, and the Strategic Framework for the Great Lakes region. To learn more, please see our dossier on the Sahel on our website. To overcome this fragmented approach to Africa, the EU and its member states, and the AU and the African states adopted the joint EU-Africa strategy, known as the JAS, in 2007 at the Lisbon Summit in Portugal. The context was new: changing global geopolitics, more optimistic narratives on the future of Africa, and the appearance of other development partners looking for opportunities in Africa. For the first time, the EU has one single political strategy dealing with Africa as one. The strategy aims to move beyond aid needs, focus on issues of common concern on the global scale, strengthen the political and strategic dialogue, and include not only institutions, AU Commission and the European Commission, but also private sector, civil society, local authorities, parliaments, regional and economic communities. The Africa-EU Summit of 2014 agreed a roadmap with 5 priority areas for 2014 to 2017. They are peace and security, democracy, good governance and human rights, human development, sustainable and inclusive development and growth and continental integration, global and emerging issues. There is no single EU funding instrument for the JAS. However, a €845 million Pan-African programme has been created to finance continent-wide programmes, which also supports the implementation of the JAS roadmap. EPAs are dealt with outside the joint EU-Africa strategy, although they have proved to be a controversial topic between the two continents and a major irritant to their relations. To learn more, please see our website for our dossier on EU-Africa relations.